The desire to discover new worlds has taken humans deep into outer space. But planet Earth still holds its own secrets, with much left to be discovered in its liquid depths.
The ocean covers 75% of the Earth. We don't know much about them.
We know about the surface of the Moon and Mars better than we know about the actual seafloor.
In Florida, reports of large gatherings of fish in the Gulf of Mexico piqued the interest of divers. They discovered an unlikely find beneath the fish. Deep, dark holes opening down into the seafloor.
You're swimming along on the bottom and it's very sandy. You'll see some fish go by, some random organisms around, but then you approach these holes and all of a sudden it's just booming with life.
These openings, commonly called blue holes, vary in size and depth. Some have only a small entrance that's 5 feet wide and opens up into a large room, while others extend down over 400 feet into the earth.
But the allure is, well, you wonder what's a little deeper and a little deeper. But pretty soon you're 150 feet or so and there's more to see. So you want to go deeper and deeper and find out what's going on.
These environments are so understudied that we don't even have the basic information to just characterize them.
Now, multiple institutions and volunteer technical divers are teaming up for expeditions to explore these environments like never before.
It's definitely exotic. The ability to really get in these systems and make human observations, which is really important, is pretty analogous to space exploration.
Nobody's taken measurements. Nobody's looked at the fauna. Nobody's looked at the geology or where they float. It's all exploration.
We're interested in whether or not these holes are connected to mainland Florida. Is there any connection through the groundwater system? Is any of the fresh water getting out to these holes? If they are a source of nutrients, which could potentially be a possible source of nutrients for red tide. We don't know.
Why are these deep holes in the seafloor? And what makes them vibrant oases in an ocean desert? Florida is a state born from the sea. The peninsula sits on a foundation of porous Swiss cheese-like limestone, making it home to many springs, caves, and sinkholes. Highly trained divers from around the world explore these liquid labyrinths for a taste of adventure.
I had an interest in them, and I had been a diver for a long, long time. And I had been, since the mid-70s, been diving in springs and sinkholes and caves on land.
Mote Marine Laboratories' Jim Coulter is part of a small percentage of divers that venture into the planet's intricate underground cave system. He first heard about similar features that existed offshore from fellow cave divers.
What if there were these offshore springs with fresh water? What kind of community would you have on those sites? And where would they come from?
Some experts believe these so-called blue holes may have formed over 10,000 years ago when sea levels were much lower, exposing a larger portion of the Florida shelf.
It rains and water sinks in the ground and flows through this porous limestone. It will slowly dissolve the calcium carbonate and form these cracks and crevices. They'll start to form channels, and little tunnels, and that might form caves and springs. And all the sinkhole basically is an underground cave that the ceiling collapses.
In 2005, Jim received a grant to begin to quantify and characterize the blue holes that fishermen had reported between 25 and 50 miles offshore.
So we would go out and try to find them. We'd dive in them to see how far they went, see how big they were.
Jim and a team of exploration divers verified over 20 different holes, all with diverse ecosystems, attracting Goliath grouper, schools of jack, turtles, and even whale sharks.
It's like this biological hotspot out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. What is causing these oases to be out there? You know, why do all these animals love being there?
To the server.
To learn more about these mysterious holes, a team of multidisciplinary experts joined forces in 2019. They began by exploring Amberjack Hole, a sinkhole located 30 miles off Sarasota. Amberjack Hole is found 114 feet below the surface and opens down to depths beyond 350 feet.
It's a little bit of a journey to get out to the hole. It takes a good 2 hours, depending on which boat you're on. And once we're out there, the first thing we have to do is anchor the boats and make sure they're in place over the holes. We're working with citizen scientists. So we depend very heavily on tech divers to be able to accomplish this research. We need divers who are certified to go to extreme depths, like 300, 400 feet.
It's a very different dive site from traditional diving. A lot of people have some apprehension just because it's this big black hole in the bottom when you go there.
Recreational divers are able to reach the opening of the hole at 114 feet on a single tank of air. But to get to the bottom of the hole, divers must prepare for a dive that will take up to 3 hours and that requires more gear. Technical divers also use a blend of gas containing oxygen, nitrogen, and helium called trimix to avoid the harmful effects of breathing air at depth.
You add helium to your mixture for two reasons. One, you want to get rid of as much nitrogen as possible, because nitrogen is what causes nitrogen narcosis, which sort of affects your rational facilities. You know, makes it a little harder to think straight underwater. Using trimix, you can remain lucid and can do your work. As a scientist, you can be more functional with deeper dives. The drawback, of course, when you go deeper is it just takes you much longer to get back to the surface. A little more risk involved.
The addition of helium also helps reduce the risks of oxygen toxicity and decompression illness that are potential threats during long, deep dives.
If you obey the rules and be careful, it's a very good scientific tool that can be utilized for exploration.
How was it?
Nice! Not bad.
Scientists are visiting the site in the spring and the fall to record any potential changes between seasons. One of their objectives is to survey marine life in the area.
We have a contraption that's an underwater camera and PVC where we can take a video going along this transect. And so we do that around the rim, and we also do it vertically, going down into the hole. And then so we're seeing so far as we start swimming the transect.
A lot of sponges, a lot of those taller things are sponge. The orange encrusting are sponges. That's a colonial, the white things are colonial tunicates.
Experts later analyzed the video to identify the types of organisms found in and around the hole.
The first 20 or 30 feet below the rim, is highly productive. It has a lot of sponges, there's corals, you see fishes and crabs and bivalves of different types. It's a very diverse area.
And then as you go down into the hole, the zones start getting less diverse and become more cold water tolerant, like lower light tolerant type organisms, and just maybe perhaps even down to where it's just more microbial type organisms.
The videos show there is more sargassum in the spring versus the fall. Additionally, a strong green layer in the fall suggests higher levels of chlorophyll and nutrients around the rim.
You do both? Let's do both.
Scientists also collect water samples from the base of the hole up to the surface.
My main focus is looking at the chemistry to see if it's providing anything extra to the surrounding water. Is it a nutrient source? Is it a sink? The Gulf of Mexico is a very oligotrophic system, meaning there's not a whole lot of nutrients just out there all the time. Just in our initial exploratory dives, we know that pH drops as you go into these holes. Temperature also drops, and we know that nutrients are elevated in these hole systems. And so we're trying to understand why, what's causing this.
While the nutrients may be attracting marine life, scientists worry they could also have a potentially adverse effect.
If it is a source of nutrients out in the middle of the Gulf, that would be really important, especially since we know that a lot of red tide blooms form offshore.
To determine if there is a link between these holes and red tide blooms, experts say more research is needed.
I'm setting up everything to check the lander.
Another group of experts from Georgia Tech and FAU Harbor Branch custom designed a high-tech device called a benthic lander, which surveys the sediment and water at the bottom of the hole.
The benthic lander looks like almost like the moon lander, something that we would put in space. It's also got a lot of instruments on it.
For this particular lander, we typically lower it on the seafloor from a crane on the ship.
In this case, with the hole being so narrow, it's a pretty small target. When you think about waves and things like that moving a ship around, the ship isn't really able to get the lander down there.
Since Amberjack Hole's diameter is only 75 feet, divers must guide the lander into the hole.
The lander weighs 400 or 500 pounds. So this thing sinks fast to the seafloor. We added flotation foam to it to make it completely neutrally buoyant so that the divers could physically maneuver it underwater and get it down into the hole.
That's something new that we had never tried before, so we're a little bit anxious about it. See if it's gonna work.
Technical divers can only stay at a depth of 300 feet for a short period of time, whereas the lander can continuously collect data over a 24-hour period. One component, called a benthic flux chamber, samples nutrients, carbon, and oxygen that transfer or flux in and out of the sediment.
Think about like taking a coffee can and inverting it on top of the sediments. Now you have a good little volume of water, and we have syringes that take samples from that little parcel of water every 4 hours, and they're sampling both inside the chamber and outside the chamber. Outside the chamber is sort of a reference, like a background. Inside the chamber tells us how much is actually coming from the sediments themselves.
And then also we have this electrochemical analyzer, we call it.
These electrodes actually allow us to monitor things like oxygen, sulfide, dissolved iron, dissolved manganese.
Once the experts determine the amount of nutrients and other elements accumulating inside the chamber, they can calculate the total amount of nutrients and other elements fluxing in and out of the sediment at the bottom of the hole. These measurements tell the scientists more about the microbial and chemical processes that occur in the sediments at different depths. To obtain additional information, Jim and volunteer technical divers also collect sediment cores.
So these are sediment samples. They came from the bottom of this particular hole at about 310 feet deep. And there's kind of what we call a debris pile on the bottom. This amount of sediment could represent, perhaps hundreds of years of sedimentation. Jordan will be looking at the chemistry of the sediment and see how it's functioning. And so we'll take it back and get it analyzed.
So we're gonna put the reference.
Reach to read
One core is used for further electrochemical analysis, while a second core is sectioned to determine how levels of nutrients and other elements change with depth.
So we're pushing the mud out using a piston, and we section it in small intervals. We then spin it in a centrifuge for 10 or 20 minutes. We separate mud on the bottom, water on top. We pour that water off, and then we filter it. We can use these pore water samples and actually conduct our analyses.
Jordan and his lab run a variety of analyses, including measuring grain size, a necessary step to model how nutrients may be fluxing out of the sediment.
We want to know if it's clay, if it's sand, if it's silt. We want to know the actual distribution of the grains in the mud. How does it compare in the hole, and how does it compare out of the hole? The next measurement we do is organic carbon. We basically weigh the sediments before and after burning. We're measuring how much carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen is lost. It's just sort of a snapshot of how much food is there.
This carbon feeds microbes living in the sediment. Additional analysis of the sediment samples showed ammonium and phosphate found in the sediment increased dramatically with depth. These same nutrients also accumulated in the benthic flux chamber.
Usually when you see a profile like that, it means that you have a flux outward. Sure enough, the nutrient measurements show that the bottom water of the blue hole is enriched in ammonium. So we're almost certain that a large portion of this is coming from the sediments themselves.
These results signify intense microbial activity in the sediment, an unexpected finding.
It's like the blue hole itself is actually responsible for creating this ecological island. So now it's sort of a chicken or the egg problem, right? Because you have this hole, and because the hole forms a shelter for fish, you have a lot of fish living there. The fish excrete, the fish die, they deliver this organic carbon, it collects in this blue hole.
Microbes break down the organic carbon and then excrete more nutrients, which fertilize the phytoplankton at the surface above the hole, which creates food for animals higher up the food chain.
So this cycle is just sort of really sustained by the physical morphology, the geology of this blue hole.
A team of biologists from Georgia Tech is closely studying the microbial life inside the blue hole to see how it might differ from the surrounding ocean.
Yes, please. 54 surface. We're looking at both sediments from the bottom of the blue hole and water column samples from the bottom all the way up.
DNA analysis of these samples makes it possible to determine what species of microbes are present and what functional roles they play in the ecosystem.
We see some really interesting things about this blue hole. The oxygen is really, really low in the water column.
Okay, so let's plot graph.
Jordan found oxygen levels decreased dramatically to 10% just below the rim of the hole. They then briefly increase again at 260 feet before falling to zero just above the debris pile.
Okay, wow, those smell.
We noticed it was really sulfitic at the bottom. We could smell it in our water samples. The divers could smell it when they were down there.
Jordan's lab confirmed that the bottom of the hole is very high in sulfur content.
When there's no oxygen in the environment, microbes can get creative and use other types of chemicals to breathe. They're breathing sulfate and they're producing sulfide.
Hydrogen sulfide is a poisonous gas to most marine life that may become trapped in the blue hole and die.
So our communities from the water column are very different between the surface, middle, and deep layers. And they are represented by 3 distinct microbial communities. And this is really interesting to us. It means there's not a lot of mixing, it means things are very stratified. We're trying to get better resolution so that we can tell where exactly that switch happens, and does it correspond to a switch in oxygen or in sulfide.
Nastasia and her team made another surprising discovery. Microbes called archaea make up almost 50% of the species living at the bottom of the blue hole. This incredibly rare finding could have implications for astrobiology.
If we're interested in life on other planets that don't have oxygen, how might things be living there? Maybe this microbe has enzymes that help it breathe without oxygen, and we're going to find that on a planet one day, and we'll know how these things are living because we have examples of microbes that are living that way here on Earth.
Much remains to be revealed about the mysterious blue holes in the Gulf of Mexico. One of the remaining uncertainties is if these blue holes connect to a larger underground network, and if that network connects to Florida's mainland.
And then the question, is it a static system or is it a moving system or is there some kind of exchange? That's where my part comes in.
We're going to take 2 samples within the blue hole and then 1 right at the rims.
To understand where the water in the hole is coming from and where it might be going, research geologist Chris Smith analyzes radioisotopes found in water samples.
The radioisotopes we're using are naturally occurring. They exist in geologic materials that make up our continental crust and oceanic crust. So what we hope to get an idea of whether or not there's movement of the water either from the aquifer matrix to the blue hole and or the movement of the water from the blue hole up into the overlying water column.
Chris pumps 50 liters of water over a fiber and collects water samples from hand-lowered bottles to analyze various radioisotopes. By knowing how long it takes for certain radioisotopes to decay, Chris can determine the relative age of the sampled water.
So it's kind of like an internal clock, and so we can use it to kind of measure how long it's been either moved away from its origin point or how long it's been in transit from some other location. In the open ocean, some of the first samples we collected, it was below our detection limit actually. It was so low. But at 60 meters below, we were picking up concentrations that were probably 100 to 1,000 times greater than our detection limit. And so there is that enrichment at those depths relative to the water that's sitting right at the surface.
Chris's findings suggest water is moving from the bottom of the blue hole to the overlying water column. But further investigation is needed to determine if there is any exchange of water with Florida's extensive underground geological matrix. Many secrets remain under the sea, but scientists are one step closer to understanding these enigmatic blue holes as ecological oases in the Gulf of Mexico.
The ocean is not just kind of the coastline and then a flat desert. You know, everything in between the coastlines is just boring and flat. And these blue holes are just one example of that.
I think it's important to better understand what's actually out there on the seafloor. It's really important for us to sort of establish, map out these conditions, unravel any sort of connections in establishing the environmental and ecological importance of these blue holes. By us going out here and taking these initial measurements, we may be able to justify future exploration.
Then we can take kind of this methodology that we're coming up with how to analyze these holes, how to characterize these holes, and bring that to other holes in the future, and maybe even to see if there's differences from the northern Gulf of Mexico to the southern Gulf of Mexico, or east to west.
People ask, what's the major discovery? What's the big finding? And as a scientist, you know that there's very few big deals that are found out all at once. Mostly it's a very slow process that builds on previous research, one little bit at a time. And the ultimate goal is to provide a better understanding of the big picture of how things work.